Hello, thanks everyone and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Dick Han and I will talk about how you can leverage Sumo Logic service to gain business and technical insight from your Windows log. So first I'd like to start off with some questions from our customers. How do I know who logged into my box? What changes were made by whom? Was the automatic update last night successful? Is my service currently up? And how overall the whole system running? So these are, the questions that are asked by our customers. And as you can see, these questions range from security to system and operation monitoring. So we'll see in this webinar that they can all be addressed by monitoring and analyzing logs with Sumo Logic. So here's an overview of today's talk. First, I will briefly go over some background on Windows event logging. And then I will switch and demo for use cases that we'll address with our Windows and Windows performance content. So first, about window logging. Now, as many of you may have already seen through the event viewers, Windows logs into different kinds of logs. Among them are application security, setup, system, and here I also list updates. For application, this is the channel where a specific application would log into. For example, a database may decide to log some of their events into this channel, and what is logging there is up to the application to decide. Security logs is a very key log channel. Basically, all the events that can reflect the security posture of your system would be logged in here. Things like, who logged in, log out, who made the changes, what kind of policy change was made, for example. Setup log typically, contains events about, when things was made to the Windows component, like, software was installed, things like that. System typically contains event when one of the that reflects the operation status of some components or services. Like for example, when a service is started or stopped, this event would be logged into this channel. Update log is it's not thing that you can normally see through the event viewer. It's actually logged into an external log. And typically, the path is, your system drive, C drive, for example, /Windows update.log. Now, that being said, many of the events, sometimes the same kind of event can be actually logged multiple times. The same incident can be logged multiple times across this log channel. So, I mean, like from the analyzing perspective, that's a good thing because, you can have a wealth of choice that you can choose from. So let's talk about the first use case, user activity. Now, user activity is a key cornerstone for any kind of security regulation and compliance purpose. It tracks things like, who accessed the system, who log on at what time, log off at what time, and who got locked out for Windows. For logout is very interesting because, it happens a lot when for some organization with very strict policy, if you made like 3 failed attempts, you'll be locked out. The other thing is permission changes. Things like, group addition or removal, account addition, removal, account addition to an existing group, for example. And last but not least, changes that are made to an account, like, resetting a password or changing to, some properties of an account. So I'm going to switch over and show you some of the dashboard under this use case. So the first thing that I want to show is the login status. As you can see from this one, I have 4 data monitors, and the first one I'm going to look at is the login by hours. Now this one showed me, the login, all the login attempts across, the last 2 hours to my whole system, and you can see here that I break it down into like failure and success logins over each hours. And the majority of them are successful, so that is good. On this monitor, I only look into failed logins because it would tell me, something if this is within the normal range or if somebody is trying to do malicious like brute force logins. And so here, this data monitor shows the logins by hours and broken down to, the host that I have on my system. In this case, I have 3. So each of this section represent the number of failed logins into the individual host. This data monitor showed me the details of the successful login. So as you can see from here that, it showed me like who was the user login to what box and how many attempts was made. Now, this is a bit, my environment is a bit extreme, so the account is very, the count is very high. So hopefully, in your environment, the numbers should be more normal. Now, one thing I want to bring to your attention is this dashboard. When you click on them, it will take you to the underlying events. And so if I click on this one, it would actually show me the actual event. And so here is typically the things that you can see for a Windows event in, if you use event viewers. So typically there would be some fields, like category, string, computer name, event code. Event code or event identifier is a very important field. It basically indicates the event, and there's a unique number for each event, and you can use that to look up, for the exact meaning of each event when you see it. So the other thing is, you can see that there's a bunch of other fields, and some of these are specific to some events, and some of these are pretty common across certain class or family of events. Like for example, login, you see account names and account domain. It's essentially tell you who's trying to do what, and then the computer name is where the event was logged. And essentially, it's where the attempt was made. And the other thing is log file security. It go back to the point of what are the log files. Typically, Windows log channels are there. So let's go back to this one, and the last one that I have in here is our RDP login. So RDP, this one just focus on remote logins. Let's go to that and see what's the event that power that. And so in this case, again, the event ID is 4778. This is very specific to RDP login. Going back to this one, 4624 is also it's a very, very common event when somebody log in. So one thing I want to notice, and a bit of caution is, on some system you see this one a lot, and there's not one-on-one between the attempt and the number of events that are generated. And the reason is, this is by Windows. It's actually logged. There's a bunch of surveys that also happen at the same time, and each it's considered as a login. So for one user login, you can actually see multiple events like this. So that's for logins, and let's go to the other part of user activities, the other aspects. So in here, you see I also have a bunch of other data monitors. This one on the left focus on account provisioning. So this one showed me, what account was created. In this case, was this user and created by whom. In this case, is an admin, and it was created at that time. And when you click on it, it would take you to the underlying event. This case is 4720. And the counterpart of that, usually, this is another funny thing is, they usually go in pairs. So like you have one login, you have another logout. For creation, you kind of have the counterpart as deletion and so on. So, and this is one showing the account deletion. And you can see that all these fields are already parsed from the event, all the details that you have in here. On the rightmost hand side, I have two data monitors that focus on group provisioning, and again from here you can tell like who created what groups. So typically this dashboard, probably this thing hopefully won't happen very often in your environment, but when it happens and the dashboard light up, it's good to to kind of pay attention to it because sometimes like this one can open the door to basically all your resources, and make sure that you pay attention to anything that related to privileged groups. Like for example, someone is added to a very administrative group. So in this case, I have this monitor that show me like who was added to what group, and the group name is not shown in here. It only shows the user was added, but again, if you click on it, then you can get more details about that. And of course, you can always customize this to actually show the group as well. So let me open it here. So this event is 4728, and it's let me pause this one, otherwise it's just refreshing. And so here you can see that this one actually, this is the user who added JDO to this group. And in this case, you can see that it's a domain admins group, so it's it's a very powerful group. So make sure that this is approved and was not intentional. And finally, there's one monitor that I want to show here is basically all the other activities. So things like somebody changed the name of the account, or somebody is resetting an account's password. And like I mentioned earlier, account lockout is something you probably have to face a lot. And when the reason is when it happens, then pretty much only the admin can only unlock it. And when you look at this one, you can see where the attempt was made, and maybe you have to unlock it from that domain controller, for example. So so that's about user activity. Let's talk about the next one. And this is the same dashboard that I just showed. Security status. Now, for security status, of course, this is again another key corner of any security compliance, and also it's a must-have for to maintain your security posture. So what's actually included in this use case? So the first thing is audit log monitoring. Now, why is that important? Well, everything that we see here is through log. So, we have to make sure that the log is not tampered with, right? So that's the first thing that, we have to monitor. For Windows, we have something very special. I'll talk about later, then that keep track of the events when the log is clear. The second kind of event that we want to track is policy changes. Now, why is it important? For example, a lot of things that are logged is determined in Windows by the audit policy, and so basically if it's changed, some of the events you assume would be there would not be there. So just make sure that this thing, the policy change, whatever it's that showed up, has been approved or must be approved properly. And then account changes, definitely, like I said, something like somebody added to a privileged account. Last but not least, changes to the configuration, the box. For example, like firewall changes, somebody added new rule to either block some traffic or unblock some traffic, can certainly alter your secure posture. So let's go over the dashboard and show these activities. Here I'm going to switch back to my demo environment. Let me close this one. So so as you can see here on this dashboard, I have 4 monitors. The first one I want to show is the audit log clear, and this one go back to the special event that Windows keep track when somebody cleared the log. And so this is definitely the thing that you have to keep track, and and many security compliance regulation actually require you to to do this. And so in this case, I know that this user cleared the log at this time, and it happens a lot. Again, my environment is a bit extreme. In your environment, you should not see this, and it's definitely an anomaly if you do see that. In general, these things should not happen very often. So anything that, anytime that this one showed up, definitely take a look, make sure that it's authorized. This one show the audit policy changes, and this is also important in addition to the audit log monitoring. And so if I click on this one, again, it will take you to the underlying events, and let's see what we have in here. So I don't have a lot of detail for this one, but this is a very broad category. So you may have to look into the event detail a little bit, and some of that can be seen from the message, which I already parsed out here. So this one is not very interesting. It's probably okay, but for some others, you may see like where the policy change, what change was made. Firewall change. So this is another one that you just focus on firewall changes. So you can see here that I actually have a lot of events, right? And what it says is that okay, this filters was present when the Windows filtering platform-based filter engine started, and the action is blocked. Now this one is interesting because it usually happens. So a little bit of background on Windows filtering platform. So Windows filtering platform is the platform that that provide the API and all the base engine for filtering traffic that all the other service on Windows third party also leverage. Things like Windows Firewall actually leverage this platform. So this is a very key component. And this thing essentially tell me that when the system boot up, there's a bunch of filters that the engine goes through and start it. And so like this is when you want to make sure that the rules that you set up, for example, are set up properly. And the good thing is here you see that a lot, but this is only, like I said, happens when a machine boot up. And so hopefully you don't have to see this like on a daily basis. And if you do see it, you don't have to go through all this huge list. And and then finally, I also keep track of all the other policy changes. So a little bit of you can see here MPS SVC policy change, a little bit of filtering platform policy change, and then other policy change and authorization policy change. Now the authorization policy change may be interesting, and the MPS SVC is another third party that that monitor firewalls and traffic filtering. MPS basically stands for Microsoft Protection Service, and so if you click on that, let me go to that. And let me pause it. So again, you see something like 5441. This is what I just mentioned, about when the system boot up. If you don't, if this is not interesting, you can ignore that, certainly. And this one is about MPSSCC, and this one say that, okay, Windows Firewall didn't actually apply this rule. So this is something maybe interesting because you want to make sure that, hey, this is not some key rule that you already put in there and somehow didn't work. In this case, it just turned out to be something pretty benign, right? It just say that, okay, Windows Firewall did not apply this following rule, and the rule is this name, and the port is just resolved to an empty set, right? So all of this rule, this name, you should be able to see when you open Windows Firewall rule, and you should see this in the list. And so all of this one should be able to show you, when somebody like go in and modify your Windows Firewall rule. And like I said, when somebody does that, it would show up in this dashboard, and normally this one won't show, so you don't have to do this on a daily basis, and only need to look at when when you see something happen. So we talk about user activity and security status. The next one that I want to cover is system activity. So system activity would, show you, okay, what's the status of some, components, their operations, things like, when a service stopped, or restarted, when a system, the whole box is restarted, updates that happen to the system, the status, and some of the changes again to configuration. Now, you may have noticed by now that some of the items already covered earlier, so I'm not going to cover it again. But the reason they are here because sometimes there's not a clear cut between these use cases. Like user activity is good for monitoring user activity from the operation as well from the security aspect. So let's go into the dashboard that cover system activity here. Close this one. So in this case, I have 4 monitors. The first one I want to bring up is the service operation. So in this case, I have the number of start, stop per service per host. So for example, this one, Google Update service is started like 69 times on this host. And it stopped like a lot too over the last 24 hours. So again, my environment is extreme, so you should not see a lot of activities like this. And now, why this is interesting and important? Because you have to make sure, you should make sure that the key service in your environment is up, and then when it's down, it make sure it back up again. So case in point, a couple of years ago, like some Windows bot is known to turn on, turn off the security service on Windows, and that's one of their signatures. So if you look at this one, if you monitor this kind of activity, then you can spot something normal even before your antivirus pick up this bot. At the bottom here, I have the system restart, and it showed me like this one was over the last 24 hours. This host was restarted 6 times, this one 10 times, and 9 times. So just for illustration here, the number is very high. But definitely in production, this thing, if it happens, you just make sure that it's already scheduled. This is a pretty big thing. So that's for the operation on the service side. Updates is another very key area because you have to make sure that your system is up to date and that all the vulnerability is patched. And this one, the log actually comes from the external log, like I mentioned earlier. So if you collect this log and and send it here, then we have the content. We'll pick it up And so in this case, let me open it. For successful updates, here it lists out, all the software name as well the KB article and when it was updated. And so one thing that is interesting here is that all the updates typically has a KB article, and so when you need to investigate, you can just put in this KB article in the search. This one keep tracks of failure updates, and this is typically more interesting because you want to make sure that hey, this is not something critical that was not updated fully. And so going back to my example of having a bot would turn off something, and what happens is that hey, if you know that there's a patch for the vulnerability that this bot leverage, for example, then you want to make sure that your system have all the updates related to this KB article done successfully. So one thing that you can do it that is you can open a search, and then in this case, let me open a search in here. I have a search in here, and this is just keep track of all the automatic updates, and here I can just gonna put a KB article in here. Let me open this one just to get some data. And go to this one and just got this number. And I can put in here. So when you do this, it would return all the attempts related to the this KB article. And when it fails, that typically there would be reattempts. And when you do this, you actually know, okay, whether it's eventually successful or not. Okay, so that's about this use case. Now we cover user activity, security activity, and system operations. Now all of these use cases pretty much leverage events at the top level, right? I mean, like at the by that I mean at a higher layer. Now, sometimes you have to look a little bit deeper, right? I mean, by that I mean you have to look into things like performance and how the CPU is like, what's the consumption, what's the memory status, and from the whole OS perspective. And that takes me to the next use case, performance. And in this one, we cover all the four categories, main categories, CPU, memory, network, and disk I/O. And we'll go into that shortly, but essentially under each of this metric set, there will be a bunch of other metric counters that that reflects basically the performance of your box. So let's visit the first one, CPU metric. Okay, and again here I'm going to switch back to the demo environment. And so in this case, you can see that I have 6 monitors. The 3 monitors on the left basically tell me the overall picture of the whole box, things like the average CPU usage by the whole host, the privilege and user time per host, and this is another view of CPU usage by host. So let's take a look at one of them, right? So this one basically show me the average CPU usage by host, and you can see right away that there's an anomaly with this host, and the CPU is very high compared to the rest, right? And so if I want to dig a little bit deeper, I'm going to click on that, and that took me to the events. And so this event doesn't come out from from the regular Windows log. It's actually pulled by our collectors. And so when you click on this thing, right? Let me expand it, and so you can see that this is CPU per process, and there's a lot of counters that are put in here. And for this CPU usage, I only use one counters. And these are very similar to when you open Perfmon on the Windows. You see this set of counters. Here's another one, privilege and user time by host. Now this thing is a little bit deeper. I mean, so maybe not all of you would care, but basically it for CPU, it distinguishes the time, the consumption between privilege, namely things by the Windows system kernel, versus the user time, which is the consumption by your app. So again, this is something a little bit deeper, and you may or may not care about that. On the right-hand side here, I have the consumption that's broken down by process. So it gives you a little bit more detail about which processes are running on your boxes and how much CPU they're consuming over the last 15 minutes, right? So in this case, let me open this one. This is again the processor time, and it's based on the counter called processor time by process. And so something that stands out from here immediately for me is, for this Artemis box, this application is consuming like 97% of the CPU, and this is compared to the rest. So I mean, this is when you correlate with the CPU here, it immediately stands out that what process costs this CPU spike, and it's eating up basically my CPU of the box. And so that, and also this one is basically again broken down into the privilege time and user time, right? So I mean, if you have this dashboard can be very handy, and if you decide, you can just decide that you're just interested in a set of process that you're running on your production servers, and you can ignore the rest, because obviously in this one you see a lot of process, and many of them you might not be interested in at all. So that's CPU. The other major set is memory, right? So memory is another core metric with respect to performance. So in this case, I have things like, this is the memory, available memory by host, and typically, you should see that this is pretty flat line. I mean, it should be stable, but if you see spike like this is definitely, something out of the norm. Again, because my environment is a bit extreme, but in your environment, it should hopefully be a flat line. And this one show me, let me open this one, show me the virtual memory by large process. And like I said, I have a lot of process on my cluster. So here, I only show you the big ones, the one with very large virtual memory. And the limit is actually set in the search. And this thing you can always customize. And here, this two monitor in the middle show me the top virtual memory consumer, and at the bottom it show me the one with largest resident footprint. And so it's kind of expected for me, because I know that I have some Java, some programs that use Java, and these are pretty big programs. So this is actually normal for me. But in case that you see that if one host, the footprint, let's say if you have memory leak, then this number would keep increasing over time. So you can spot it when you compare it to different hosts in your cluster. So the last thing here I want to bring to your attention is page fault, right? So page fault and page rise. Now, the page fault is something that happens when the kernel has to go and fetch memory from disk when it's not, when the page is not in memory, right? So if the page fault increase, that is, a sign of, trouble. Normally this thing can spike up a little bit, but it go back to normal. But if it stay high, that means that your box is really running out of memory. And so this thing, you can correlate that and with the available memory, and to tell you which box is in trouble. And if you can always set alert, because maybe you don't monitor this, dashboard all the time, so you may rely on alert. But the key thing is that, all the data is in there, and then search is in there. You can, just get it out from this dashboard and then build an alert on top of that. So we cover CPU, memory. Next thing is performance, network performance. Now, network performance is interesting in the sense that, these reflect things that sometimes you don't control in your box, right? Like things like external, like firewalls or routers, right? If they die, for example, there's no way that you can tell it from your Windows event. There's no event that would log that. But you can still see it by monitoring, the amount of bytes, the communication sent out from your box, right? So here you can see that I have inbound monitor focused on inbound traffic, outbound traffic, and others that focus on things like queue and current bandwidth. So let's take a look at inbound first, right? So inbound here, actually the first one here shows the amount of bytes received by this host, and at the bottom I have the amount of packets, and this thing not necessarily would be linearly proportional, and that can be the case where you have a lot of inbound packets, or but the byte is small, right? So that can be kind of a normal. And same thing goes for outbound. If you see a lot of packets sent out, but the byte sent is small, then that, or the or vice versa, then that is also something abnormal. Output queue length is, in general, it's pretty flat. So this is good because that means that I'm not behind when it comes to sending data. So when it's pretty flat and it's pretty empty, that's good. But if if it's high, you know that okay, you're running behind. So in that case, for example, in that particular scenario, you can have a lot of bytes sent out. It's constantly high, right? And then the queue is full. So that means that okay, you are kind of behind. There's something blocked, or maybe it's time for you to upgrade the bandwidth. Last one I want to touch is disk performance. So again, things here, for disk performance, it's usually something that you don't have to deal with as much as CPU and memory. But when it happens, like a disk fail, then you would see some of the activity just spike up. So on this monitor, let's see here, I have the number of read activities. Let me open that again. Refreshing. And the write activities. So on this one, I have the read time, average read time. That means the percentage of time that's spent on reading operations, and the amount of bytes that overall that got read over the last 15 minutes. So again, this one should be proportional somehow, but not necessarily linearly. But if you see the opposite trend, one counter go up, but the other one stay flat, that's usually something abnormal. And the other thing goes for write. And so when your disk fail, this counters, this counter would tell you the story. So, just to summarize, okay, we go over this dashboards already. So just to recap what we covered, we today we went over 4 use cases: user activities that keep track of all the user actions; security status, things that cover changes made to your system. System operations that cover, your operation status of the services in your environment. And last but not least is performance, in which, we cover all the 4 major set of metrics: CPU, memory, disk, and network. So you can see that, there's a lot of valuable information in your Windows log and your Windows box. And Sumo Logic can, give you a glass of pane in one place that covers, all the multiple different aspects of your environment, from security to operations, help you to monitor and understand your system security posture and, troubleshoot and manage the server performance. With that, I'm going to hand over for any question on the floor.
Okay, so thank you for those who submitted questions. We'll go down the list of them. So the first one was, do you have integration with Active Directory?
Yes, we have integration with Active Directory, and we can pull in all the topology structure of your AD. So things like, okay, what are the size, what the forest, and the old operating system that in your AD, and then you can use that information to give a bit of context to the event. So things like, okay, when it happens, going to the lockout example, if you recall it, if somebody log out to your DC and you don't know what DC you have to go to, then that bit of context can be that can come from the information that we pull out from your AD.
What's the best way of rolling out data collection to a large Windows environment? Do you recommend local collection or remote collection?
So the question is, what's the best way? So it depends on how big your cluster is. I mean, if it's like hundreds of nodes, for example, then definitely deploying a local collector can be a pain. So in that case, I would recommend doing remote collection. If you have just a couple of boxes, then local would be fine. You're also okaying with installing them on these boxes, then it's fine. The other aspect of having multiple local collectors is the cost of managing this collector, and when it comes to update, although it's very simple, right? You can go to we can go to the interface and you check update all of them, but still, I mean, that's when you have hundreds of hosts and you have hundreds of collectors, it's going to be a sizable task. So yeah, so there's no ultimate answer to that. It all depends on your environment.
Are there any special configurations needed to capture system updates?
For system updates, no. As far as I know, if you pull in this file, and in Sumo Logic, it's just a matter of setting up another source that you point to this file, then it would automatically pick it up.
Okay, I think that was it with regards to questions that were submitted so far.
Awesome.
Thank you. Well, thank you everyone who took time to join the webinar, and we hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you.